Hello, everyone. Welcome to the questions and answers part to the Dr. Juncker presentation. We are having some technical difficulties, but we will be starting anytime.
Okay, maybe I can just. Yeah, I think that's a. Okay, well, hear me. Okay, that's great. I'm not sure I can hear you.
I hear you now. Okay.
Okay, I hear you too. Okay.
Great. Welcome, Dr. Juncker. Welcome to the Congress. The participants here just saw your presentation, and we thank you very much for your presentation. It was really interesting. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it cuts every 10 half, two-thirds. So I'm not sure.
Oh.
But yeah, more or less, yes, it's pretty okay. It's okay so far.
All right. Would you prefer me to read the questions for you then, if you're having trouble?
No, go ahead and say, and I'll try to answer.
All right. My name is Alessandra, and we're having here the questions for you from the presentation. Okay, first of all, we have a question from Nayara. She says, "Thank you, Dr. Juncker, very interesting. What factors determine if the inability of PEGDA inks for direct printing of cells within the ink?"
Okay, so which was she referring to UVEC cells? Or I'm not. I couldn't hear that one part well. So what? So if I got it well, what are the factors that influence the viability of the inks for UVEC cells? Is that right?
It's asking what factors determine the inability of the PEGDA inks for direct printing of cells within the ink.
Okay. Well, so the PEGDA that we use. Okay, thanks for the question. So why can't we print cells in the PEGDA? So the PEGDA 258. This is not a hydrogel. It's in pure form, so it's liquid impermeable. So this is not an environment where cells could live. If people want to print cells inside of a hydrogel, then they can take PEGDA with higher molecular weight. So the one we used was 250 Dalton or 258 Dalton, but there's PEGDA with 700, 3,000, 5,000 Dalton, and then you can print them as a hydrogel. And so I think there might be a possibility for getting cell viability. And then there's also the option of using like a gelatin metacrylate. So where then that's a hydrogel, and sometimes people can mix PEG into that one as well, or other known hydrogels that where cells can then where there's already established methodologies for having livable cells inside of the hydrogels. And then so one could either use high molecular weight PEG or one of those gels, and then also adjust the photoinitiator and the photoabsorber for printing with the LCD printers, for example.
All right. I have another question here. How is the lab on a chip different from the concept of the organ on a chip? Do they have a similar concept?
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that question. So lab on a chip, primary. I mean, I say it's the original vision was from more an analytical chemistry vision, where all the steps that, for example, are used to do a DNA test. So you would do sample preparation, extraction, purification, amplification, and then readout, that all these steps, which historically were done in laboratory by technicians or in big robotic machines, that they would be done on a small chip. So that's the origin, kind of the catalyst for this lab on a chip idea. And so of course the core of that is microfluidics, because everything has to miniaturize. And so if we speak of organ on a chip, well, then that's the common theme here, that both work at very small scale with microfluidic channel at small volumes. But when we speak of organ on a chip, the concept is more about growing cells or an organ analog or 3D constructs that replicate critical or fundamental features of human physiology or animal physiology that can then be used to study, understand this physiology, or to do drug screening. So both have this notion of miniaturization, but one of them is typically more for analyzers, so like a rapid test, for example, or some chemical analysis. And the other one is more for culturing cells and organ constructs for a long time, and then studying the system in this small chip.
That's very interesting, actually. And the many applications that it has the possibility of being applied. It's very, actually very, it's very impressive also. All right. I have another question here. What are the specific challenges you've faced in designing biocompatible inks for 3D printing?
Okay, so yeah, so we have used inks for microfluidics and for then cell culture. And so for cell culture, of course, you want to make sure that, you have to verify that the cells are that there's no toxic impact on the cells. So the first, of course, we chose a base material, so PEG diacrylate. So PEG is well known, a biocompatible or non-fouling material that is widely used. So that was a good start, because we know that the base material could be used with cells, as others have done. And then in our particular applications, one of the challenges with PEG is actually that it's non-adherent, so cells cannot grow well on the PEG. And so we made a porous material, and so a little bit by chance, we found out that this nanoporosity with 10% porogen, that this promoted cell adhesion. And so that was one factor that improved the biocompatibility, so to speak. But then the big question for biocompatibility is often that after printing, there is residual photoinitiator or photoabsorber, and that these are often chemicals that are phototoxic. And so what is important then is to take the printed chip and to rinse it very well, and rinse it also with solvents. So we use ethanol or isopropanol. And depending how thick the chip is, then you'll need to rinse it longer to make sure that everything is being washed out. And so if it's well cross-linked and we have been able to remove all these chemical additives, then we found that the chips were actually quite biocompatible, and that we could either culture this material in presence of cells or even cells growing on top of this material when we made it more cell adhesive. And maybe just one more comment. So so this worked well with the DPL, so the 385 nanometer. There it works really well. With the LCD printer, we just started that. And so that's a 405 nanometer exposure, and they're more, and because the light intensity is also lower, then we need more photoinitiator and more and more of these chemicals. And so there more work is needed to optimize the ink formulation to make it biocompatible for longer term and for culturing maybe stem cells that are very sensitive.
Oh, that's very interesting. I have a question here from Amanda. She said, Professor, thank you for this shared knowledge. How can human ingenuity through advances in new nanoengineering technologies improve the health and quality of life of people in poor developing countries? What would be the insight, since every new technology in the medical field is expensive?
Okay, well, thanks. I think I got cut in the beginning a bit, but I think, well, if I re-summarize, I mean, we invent new technologies, but how can we ensure that they benefit people with low resource settings? So I think that's, maybe not from my perspective here, and I have my biases, but I think that's one of the exciting aspects of the 3D printing, is that now these 3D printers become so affordable overall. And I think my model here is the cell phones. Cell phones were initially developed for rich people in rich countries, but as they became ever more cheaper and the value became higher, well, they now become much more widespread, and even in places where there's much less resources, they become very ubiquitous and used. And so here what I'm seeing is that with 3D printers, which now are so affordable, at where with $200 we can buy a 3D printer that has actually a really good performance, that it hopefully will empower people in these low resource places to actually conduct their own research as well. So both to adopt some of the solutions we developed with these low cost printers, but then also actually to do their own development in their own context, where they can also address the limit or work within the limitations they face and come up with ideas that are meet the demands and the constraints that they're facing. And so I think that's one of the exciting part, and I'm happy to see that there's a question, and hopefully also some resonance with that vision and that approach.
Yeah, that is true. 3D printing have been making available many different types of complex technologies. I have another question here. It's how do you envision the future of 3D printing in terms of its applications in tissue engineering and regenerative medicine?
Okay, thanks for that. So I think obviously one of the applications for printing organ-on-a-chip structures, and that, I think what we have done now, our first step here with even low-cost printers here in particular, is to print a scaffold where we can seed the cells or where we can seed spheroids, and then to monitor how these different organs interact and respond to drugs. Of course, maybe a next step would be then, like, the first question is also to print the cells directly within the hydrogel and the construct, or print different types of cells, so that we can take the next steps in terms of biocompatibility. And then beyond that, well, there's already efforts, but there are still, I think, a lot of challenges, is to really print also organ structures for reimplantation. And then, of course, some of the challenges that we need to print both very large scale, because organs are very large, much larger than what I showed maybe today, or except maybe for the largest structures. But then there's also a requirement for print very fine structures, because the smallest blood vessels, they're only maybe 8 micrometer in diameter. And so there's this contradiction of being able to print both very large and very high resolution. And I think that's where then a lot of research is, where maybe can we print these at the middle section, mid-resolution, on a large area, and that's where LCD printers now, these low-cost printers, have really an edge on many other technologies, even so they're being much cheaper, and they can print much higher resolution on large area. However, what we still need to think about is how to have a reconstruction of the very small features, so that maybe through regenerative medicine of the printed organ itself, it can recreate these very tiny structures, so that we could have a more functional organ. But I think there's a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities to explore these challenges with these new printing technologies.
I'm sorry about that. Even though there are many challenges, it's amazing to see how the things have progressed. There's simply, I think that was the last question, Dr. Juncker.
Okay.
The next speech is about to. It's already happening, actually. So thank you very much again for your participation. Your presentation was very interesting, and I'm sure many people here have enjoyed the content. Would you like to add anything?
Well, thanks for having me. Sorry about the technical challenges. And then, yeah,
Right.
happy. I mean, if anyone wants to reach out, I mean, I think I have my contact, so feel free to connect by email or whatever, or LinkedIn. I think I shared that as well. And then thanks for organizing
All
this.
right.
It's great to see that, you know, spreading and promoting science and spreading knowledge. I think it's great. And it's great to use the digital tools to do that.
It is. Thank you again, Dr. Juncker. So feel free to, everybody feel free to enjoy the rest of the Congress also, and have a nice afternoon for everyone.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.